Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we are going to talk about the money that I make as a pagan author. Um, People get weird about money. Money is kind of a taboo topic. People get very uncomfortable with it. Especially in Wicca, there is a taboo on charging money for the craft. And that taboo really applies to training, initiation, and magic. So, I would never charge someone money for membership in my Seekers group. I would never charge someone money to perform a spell on their behalf. But then there are also people who are involved in initiatory Wicca who do things like write books or perform tarot readings, or, they might own a metaphysical shop. And those are sorts of things where people, of course, charge money because that's their livelihood, that's how they live. But conversations around money tend to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think there is sometimes this question, this idea that people have that, pagan authors are making big bucks off of writing about the craft or whatever their traditions are, that they're making big money off of it, and that it's somehow like a grift or a con job, and that they're just in it for the money and so on. And by and large, that's really not true. So I kind of just wanted to sit down and be really honest about the money and talk about the money that I make, and where that money goes for me, as well as just kind of some larger thoughts about people who do this, who do sort of pagan authorship or content creation or things like that as a full-time job, and the amount of work that entails for them. That I do not do this as my full-time job, right? Like, I have a 9 to 5. I work for a large company. I do corporate training, and then this is something that I do outside of work time, and I do it purely for my own fulfillment. But there are people who try to make a living off of uh, being pagan authors and doing the festival circuit and going and speaking at events and online content creation and so on. And power to them, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So, so let's dive into it. My fall royalties statement arrived a little while back, and Llewellyn sends out royalties statements on a semi-annual basis. So every 6 months, once in the fall and once in the spring, I get a royalties statement that tallies up my sales in the past 6 month period, and shows me how much money I've made off of each book. And then usually the royalties check arrives about a month after that statement. So my fall royalties statement is here, and I'm just going to walk through. I've written 4 books at this point, and I'm going to walk through how many copies each of those books has sold, how much money I've made off of them, both in the past 6 months and then overall since the book was published. And we're just going to take a look together at how much money I make. Couple of things that are very important to call out here. First is I'm not necessarily reflective of what everyone is making, partly because people negotiate their own contracts, but then partly also because, I'm a small fish, everybody. I I am not a well-known pagan author, right? Like, I have my niche, and that's great. I love it. I love writing my work, and I love the people who engage with my work. But I'm not a big name in paganism, and so obviously there are people out there who are selling much more than I am, who are going to be making more money, and just keep that in mind, right? I'm only talking about my own experiences here. The second thing, also super, super important, just to call this out right up front. I'm going to go through the money, and you're going to see I don't make a lot of money off of these books. That's not a bad thing. I'm not complaining about that. I'm not pitching a fit. I'm not saying that I should have more money than, my contract is pretty standard for the publishing world, and in particular for the pagan publishing world. There may be other better selling authors who are able to leverage higher royalties, which makes sense because they sell more copies. But this is not my job. This is not my full-time job. I have a full-time job. That's what pays my bills. And I'm not in this because I want the money out of it. I'm in this because I enjoy writing, and I'm chronically incapable of shutting up. So when I talk about the money that I make here, to me, this is a good thing, right? Like the amount of money that I've got is fantastic. I'm delighted to be paid for my work, and I'm not complaining about the money that I do or don't make, right? Like my contract is fair. I'm happy with my contract. I have no issues there whatsoever. I'm just sharing this because I think from the outside, people may not realize that most of the people who are working as pagan authors are doing that as a side gig and are largely supporting themselves by other means. So this is meant to be informative. This is meant to be kind of a peek into the life of an author. This is not meant to be calling anyone out or being upset with anything or like nothing like that. This is not a negative video, right? We're just trying to have fun and look at some numbers. So with that out of the way, let's go book by book in chronological order. So we will start with Cabala for Wiccans. This was my first book. It was published in December of 2021. Yeah, that's right. December of 2021. And Cabala for Wiccans has sold 1,725 print copies to date. It's also sold 236 ebook copies. Generally speaking, the benchmark for success at Llewellyn is 3,000 copies. If you sell 3,000 copies of a book, that book is doing well. Llewellyn has a good return on investment. Everyone's happy with it. If you sell more than 3,000 copies, that's amazing. That's a smashing success. If you sell fewer than 3,000 copies, it's not great. So, Cabala for Wiccans, a very niche book, right? There's a very specific audience for this book. It's unsurprising that it didn't sell enormously well. But to date, 1,725 print copies, 236 ebook copies. In the past 6 months, I've sold 85 print copies and 16 ebook copies. And that's pretty normal. Normally, a book sells very well when it first comes out. That's when most of its sales come in. And then it sort of slows down to a pretty steady trickle. And I would say, we'll see, but I would say it's pretty normal for, like, after that initial rush, it falls off to somewhere between, usually 50 and 75 copies sold per 6-month period. So that initial rush is really when most of the sales happen, and that's why authors get so big about pre-orders, because pre-orders are a really important part of how a book sells, but then also about things like Amazon reviews. Leaving an Amazon review helps a book to get recommended by Amazon's algorithm, which boosts its sales, but that really has the greatest impact right when a book comes out. Still useful, if you read Cabala for Wiccans now, go leave an Amazon review, it will help. But it helps significantly more right when the book comes out, because that's when the wave of initial sales is. So, money-wise on this book, in the past 6 months, I earned $72.58 on physical copies and $32.56 on ebook copies. Overall, across at this point, 4 years that the book has been out, I've earned $1,472.95 in physical copies and $480.26 in ebook sales. So that's this one. The second one is far and away my most successful book, which is unsurprising given the subject matter. This is Tarot for Real Life. This is my introductory tarot book. I love this book. It is the tarot book that I wish that I had had when I was getting started. Tarot for Real Life, to date, has sold 2,941 copies. So we're basically right at that 3,000 copy benchmark that makes for a successful book. I've also got 205 ebook copies of Tarot for Real Life out in the ether. In the past 6 months, I have 71 print copies and 13 ebook copies of this sold. And money-wise, I've made $72.73 in print copies in the past 6 months and $29.78 in ebook sales. Overall, again, this is my most successful book, I have made $3,012.66 in print sales and $469.61 in ebook sales. So that is book number 2. Book number 3 is my darling. This is my favorite of the books that I've written. Unfortunately, it is out of print right now with Llewellyn, and we'll see why, because it didn't sell very well. And right, like I think a thing that people don't realize is that publishing companies are businesses. They have to turn a profit on the books that they're selling. And if a book doesn't sell, it costs money to keep it in print. The publishing company takes a loss on that. So unfortunately, Queen of All Witcheries did not sell very well, and it has been taken out of print. I'm working on trying to get together a revised and expanded edition, which will come out at some point in the future. So this book is not dead, but it's in a coma. It's sleeping. It's King Arthur. It will come back eventually. Queen of All Witcheries to date has sold 1,248 copies, print copies, and then 134 ebook copies as well. So again, if we think about that 3,000 copies as the benchmark, 1,248 well below what we're looking for a successful book. That's not super surprising for a couple of reasons. One is just that this is a book in a market that doesn't do very well anymore. The big boom of goddess publishing was in the 70s through the 90s, and you really see very, very few goddess books published after the turn of the millennium. When you do see goddess books, they're often sort of like, here's a collection of goddesses, right? Here's a book about how to work with lots of different goddesses. So you have a chapter on Persephone, and you have a chapter on Kali, and you have a chapter on the Morrigan, and so on. As opposed to books about sort of, in scare quotes, the goddess. Like, those books just aren't published anymore. There's not as much of a market for them. And the fact that they're not published anymore is part of why I wrote this book, because there isn't a good book out there that is about the goddess, that has kind of up-to-date history, right? It better reflects our understanding of history and archaeology, and that also is more in line with some contemporary understandings of gender, and so on. Like, you read a lot of the books from the 70s and 80s, and they're beautiful books, but they're very rooted in a notion of womanhood as something essential and biological. They're very rooted in this notion of, like, womanhood as womb power, which is certainly an interpretation of womanhood that is accessible and empowering for a lot of people. But there are also a lot of people, cis and trans alike, who feel disempowered by that notion, right? Like, there are lots of women who have chosen never to have children. And so the idea that their womanhood is directly related to having a uterus and to their capacity to give birth is something that nowadays a lot of people find alienating or have chosen to move away from. And there are just other conversations about gender that are happening, which is not to say that the older conversation is bad or wrong. Like, again, I think it's accessible. I think it's an interpretation that can be really deeply meaningful and valuable to a lot of people. And it's still absolutely on the table. It's just that there are other conversations happening as well. And so I wrote this book because I really wanted a book about the goddess that I could give to people without needing to say, okay, like, ignore all of the historical claims and also be aware that these are not the only thoughts that people have about gender and womanhood. And unfortunately, there wasn't a book like that. So I love this book. It's a very niche topic, and for a market that really doesn't exist anymore. So it's not surprising that it didn't sell well. The other reason that it didn't sell well is I am bad about marketing, right? You see, like, the really successful authors are the ones who put a lot of legwork into promoting their work, making public appearances. They show up at pagan events so that people know them, right? They go to Paganicon, they go to Mystic South. Pantheacon, I think, is dead now, but they used to go to Pantheacon. Like, they go to the cons, they go to the festivals, they make their faces visible so that people know about their work. They're promoting things on social media, they have websites, they have shops, they have presences. And I just don't do that, right? Like, I do not do that amount of promotional work, much to the chagrin of my darling publicist at Llewellyn. Hi, Marcus. You know, again, to me, this is a side gig. To me, this is something that I'm really not doing for money. I'm like, the money's great. I'm glad that I'm paid. I would rather be paid than not be paid. But I write these books because I feel like I have something to say, and it's interesting to me, and I like writing. the part of it that I enjoy is the writing, and I hate doing publicity. I hate trying to make myself seen. And then on top of that, right, like it's it's a really serious commitment to like do the festival circuit. You have to be able to take time off work. You have to be able to travel, and that's just often a commitment that I'm not willing or able to make. Right? If I'm going to take time off work and travel, I'm going to like go to my college roommate's wedding. I'm not going to take that time and go to a pagan festival so that I can promote my books. And that's just a matter of like choices that I make as an individual and the things that I choose to prioritize, right? I could choose to prioritize publicizing my books. And if I did that, I would sell a lot better. There are people who make it a priority to do that marketing, to do that promotional work, and it pays off for them. So just a matter of like how you choose to use and prioritize your time. And I don't prioritize publicizing things, and because of that, my books don't sell. So, so part of it is with Queen of All Witcheries in particular. Part of it is the subject matter of the book is just not sexy in the market right now. But part of it is also that there is a lot of legwork that can be done by an author to help make themselves more visible to a potential readership. And I'm not doing that legwork because it's a lot of work and it's exhausting, and I don't want to. So, and then let's come to my final book here. Is Tarot for the Magically Inclined. To date, Tarot for the Magically Inclined released in July of this year, so it's been out for less than 6 months. It has sold 409 print copies and no ebook copies. I don't actually know if we have an ebook of this. We might not, because there's a lot of the way this book is in particular. There are a lot of illustrations and just things that are very difficult to format in an ebook, so there might not be an ebook of this. But regardless, I've sold 409 print copies, which is not great. Like, definitely the lowest sales that I've seen for a book. Again, partly due to I'm not doing a ton of promotional work for it. Part of that is that I used to have more of a social media presence than I do now, but the internet is just a dumpster fire. I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Blue Sky, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I'm kind of on Instagram, but not really. Mostly that's just me posting hiking pictures. So like, I'm not doing a lot of social media marketing, and you can see how much of an effect that has. The people who really do put effort into marketing their work on social media see it reflected in sales. They do. It's just a lot of work. Like, it's a real commitment to do that much work. But anyways, I have sold 409 copies of this to date. In the past 6 months, I have sold 40 copies. That's not counting pre-orders. So 40 copies in the past 6 months. And so that's, in the past 6 months, I've got $47.71 out of it. Total over all 409 copies I've sold, I've got $487.83. So definitely not a smash hit bestseller, unfortunately. But again, that's not super surprising. And, don't get me wrong, I would prefer for more people to read my work. I write these things with the hope that people will read them. But it's a trade-off, right? Like, you think about just the amount of work that goes into writing a book to begin with, because that's a lot. And then you think about all of the promotional work that people are doing on top of that and in addition to that to supplement it, where you have people who have Patreons and they're regularly posting content there, including both written content and things like very polished, highly edited videos, which, as you can see, I do not do on this channel. I just sit down in front of the camera and talk. You have people who are putting together TikToks, Instagram Reels, Instagram Lives. Again, they're attending in-person events. A lot of the time they have Etsy shops or physical brick and mortar stores where they are selling their items. And that's, it's a lot of work. Anyone who is trying to do pagan authorship and content creation as a full-time job is putting in a lot of work. Because just the part of it that's writing a book is already a ton of work. but that's in many ways the smallest part of being a successful pagan author. And most of it is doing that legwork of just constantly having content out there, keeping your name relevant. Oh, good grief, my computer has gone to sleep. Give me a second. I don't know why it does that when I'm recording. Anyways, keeping your name relevant, and making yourself seen and making your work seen so that people will know about it and be interested in buying it. I have enormous respect for everyone who does that amount of work. Also, I have no interest in doing that amount of work. So, all told, across all four books, in the past 6 months, I made $302.82. I actually made a little bit less than that because my advance for Tarot for the Magically Inclined hasn't paid out yet, so I'm not seeing that money back. But all told, $302.82. And then across all 4 years, right? My first book came out in December of 2021. It's been almost exactly 4 years at this point. Across 4 years of being a pagan author, I have made $6,980.10. And that's great. I'm very happy with that $6,980.10. That comes out to about $1,745 per year, which is enough to cover 1 month's rent and a couple of nice dinners. So, like, I'll take it. It's a little bit of extra money in my pocket. It helps me breathe. It basically it's spending money for me, right? I get that royalties check and then I go do something nice for myself. But I'm not rolling in it. And really and truly, I don't think anyone is rolling in it as a pagan author, which again is not an indictment of the publishing industry or like I'm not trying to call anyone out here. But I think we sometimes have this idea that like, oh, you wrote multiple books and therefore you must be making so much money off of this. And that's just not the state of the world. So I don't have, again, like I don't have a Patreon or a coffee or anything like that, because I'm really not doing this for the money. This is not my means of supporting myself. My corporate job is my means of supporting myself. But if there are authors that you like and follow, if they have a Patreon or a coffee or, any means of kicking a little bit of extra money their way, if you like their work, go support them, because it's a lot of work. And I think that sometimes people don't realize how much work it is for the amount of money involved. So that's about all I got here. Thank you for watching. This was fun. I had fun. And again, this is just like interesting for me to sit down and look at the numbers and think about the money. I am waiting for my royalty check to arrive. It will be here in the mail probably in the next week or two. And then I'm going to go have a nice dinner and go see a movie. So stay well. I'll be back sometime soon. Ciao.